Divorce happens. In fact, it happens to almost 50% of first marriages. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Divorce Happens, a podcast to educate, inspire, support, and yes, make you laugh through divorce and beyond so that you can start fresh on the next phase of your journey. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh.
You get divorced. You get divorced.
Getting divorced?
I'm getting a divorce.
You're getting a divorce.
Because she's getting a divorce.
So what if I get divorced?
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter. Because as we know, divorce happens and then you start fresh. And we're here with one of our Fresh Starts experts. Erica, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yes, thanks so much for having me. My name is Erica Miller. I am a clinical psychologist, pediatric neuropsychologist. I do a lot of parent coaching work. And my job is really to help support parents in supporting their kids, to help you feel like you're a strong parent as much as possible, right? There is no rule book, as we're always saying. And I don't know exactly what you say about divorce, but I feel like there's no really rule book there either. And so I really see my role as helping you be as confident and prepared for the questions that come up from your kids, knowing that there's no right way to do anything.
No, and boy, those questions are interesting, right? I mean, even in the middle of the night, I have to pee, and then I'm going to ask you, who is Jesus? And you're like, well, I don't know. Let's talk about this in the morning.
Yeah.
So there's
not the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm really happy you're here. I work one-on-one with a lot of people going through a divorce. We have so many people coming to the website, dads and moms. And I think that the number one question a lot of people have when they consider divorce is, how will I even talk about this with my kids, right? And we're going to use the word kids kind of vague here, right?
Yeah.
Anything from, in the kid range. So what would you say, Erica, how would you start to approach this subject? Maybe you and your partner decided to separate and the kids are going to start noticing some changes around the house. What do you do here?
I think you really want to start telling your kids sooner rather than later, first of all, because just like you said, they notice, they pick up on things, right? They feel it.
Yeah.
So I think this actually gets to a really good kind of core of it, is that kids also feel the tension in the home that might be happening beforehand, right? People don't just wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to get divorced.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that may also bring a lot of stress is, oh my God, this is actually something I'm really going to have to be communicating with my partner about. Now, I'm going to kind of assume for a second that the partner is going to be still in the kids' lives and is relatively safe and around. I think if families have a different situation, the partner's unsafe, I would advise something different. And that's
we can have you back on to talk about that.
Let's just say this is co-parent where you're we are going to continue to co-parent in some capacity. Yeah. Usually what's been happening is there's been a lot of tensions. You don't agree, right, about so many things, which is a divorce. And so I think one of the first things to really be doing is to kind of really need to nail down and communicate with your partner. How are we going to communicate about this with our child? And I think it's an interesting thing is in the ways in which you're now starting to decouple. Now I'm almost saying to you, no, you need to be talking almost even more about this.
Yeah, that's so interesting to think about. And that can be really hard to do, right, as a parent, because and that's shifting the mindset from being a married couple to then being co-parents almost overnight, which is really, really difficult. So let's just talk about the logistics, because I get this question a lot. Do you talk at home? Do you go to McDonald's? What do you do here?
You have to go wherever you can, to have that conversation, you and your spouse, you mean, about it? Or your ex?
Or with the kids. Let's say you're going to talk to the kids. Yeah.
I think with the kids, it's often best to sort of be at home because they might really have a lot of feelings. So let's kind of assume that, hey, you guys got to the same page about how you're going to talk about it, right? And really what I would say, just in a nutshell, is I know we don't agree on many things, but we do probably agree on that we love our kids and we want them to have some information about this. We want to do it in a way that shows that we care and love them and we're respecting them. You can even go so far as to divide up who's going to say what. I would also, as parents, to preempt the conversation, anticipate, mentally visualize what you think maybe your kid's worst reaction could possibly be. What would be the worst thing they could really say to you? I hate you. You're the worst parents ever. I want to run away. I only want to live with dad. I only want to live with mom. What would be the worst thing? Because you're trying to like get your own emotions heightened up here so that you're kind of ready. And yet I promise you, your kid is likely going to say something that was totally like caught off guard that you had no idea. Right.
Right.
So,
Right.
then I go back to divorce happens. Lots of kids' parents are divorced. My parents are divorced.
Yeah.
And that really like to ground yourself before you say anything to your kids is it's not a divorce in and of itself that's going to like harm my kids.
Yes.
In fact, actually living in tense environment, stressful, where they don't feel like their parents are safe, their parents seem stressed out is actually worse for kids long term. So I think, getting yourself into that mindset is key in a way before you're really like talking to your kids. Okay.
Okay. I love that. Could I just, so for 1 second.
Yeah.
So I've never really thought about like having those hard conversations with your kids in that way of like preparing, and every child of yours is going to respond differently, which makes it super fucking fun to have that conversation. Yeah. So, and then also I guess that gives you a chance to prepare responses, right?
Yeah.
So to know that you're not like, if your kid looks at you and goes, well, I only want to live with dad, and you've literally just told them, that's not like a personal attack. That's just a kid responding, right? So taking your ego out of that, I'm assuming, is a huge piece of this.
A huge piece of thing. And to really expect the range of responses. It's, this makes me think so much about when my own parents told me that they were in divorce, and I was 17 and my sister was 13, and I had this inkling for honestly about a week or two prior. So this wasn't like this long-term thing all of a sudden. And I remember they brought us to like our family room. We're going to have a family meeting. We never had family meetings, never did that once before. I turned around in my chair as they were telling us this news. I was 17. I just need to like make that very clear. I was old. My father at the time told me that, that was sort of disrespectful that I wasn't looking, but I like didn't want to like acknowledge this. And I had a lot of questions and anger and disagreed with what they said to me, which was that everything is going to be fine. But my sister, who was 13, her big question was, oh, can my father teach my mother how to use the barbecue? Because that was his job. And she likes barbecue chicken and steak. And she wanted to be sure that when he left, that could still happen. So I only share that because I think it's just like, that was where she was coming from. It's like, I still want to know that I can have my steak and chicken. And, I was coming from a different place. So different kids, different things completely. But it also brings up the idea that this is one conversation. And so we're really here, I think, talking about the first conversation.
Yes.
And yet, I really don't think it's a one and done, right? For people who, this is something they're going to keep talking about, that's going to keep unfolding. That's also likely going to change as your kids change, as your kids' needs change over time, right?
Yes.
Like a schedule that works at one point may not work 3 years later.
100%. I tell people that all the time, Erica. I'm always like, the custody stuff, the whatever you do now, it's not going to be the same. And I will say too, so in my situation, my kids were 3 and 5 when we separated, which is very different age group. Yeah. And my younger son, who was just 3, barely 3, is now at 8 years old processing, right? So now he'll say things to me, like just the other night, he was like, something like, what did daddy think when you got pregnant with us? Or like, what did, like questions like this, where it's my chance now as an 8-year-old to sit down with him and go, oh, your dad and I loved each other so much. And we were so happy when you were born, and we just grew apart. Right. And like, so it is an ongoing conversation. Well, I
think what's so important there is you're talking about writing the story of his family. Right. And so this conversation is not the last page in that book. It's not like now the book is closed. And so you will have a chance to go back and to rewrite different pages or to sort of change that ending and keep going. And so that's why what you're doing, Olivia, with him so much is so important, because he's now making sense of things that he wasn't able to make sense of at 3. Oh, my parents did love each other. They did want me. They did try for me. Okay. Yeah. Right. And so
I love that. Rewriting that story. That's really powerful. I hope that people who are listening to this really take that in, what you just said, because it's the story of their family. And just because you're divorced, it means the family doesn't change.
So that's key there too, right? So when you sit down with your kids, what are you going to say? And to me, yes, you might be talking to a 3-year-old, or you might be talking to an 18-year-old. You might be talking to like your adult children here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also have big feelings about parents.
Oh yeah.
And And I would really just be kind of clear. I think you need to really say, I have some news that you're going to have feelings about. We are getting a divorce and we're not going to be married anymore. And yet we're still going to be a family.
Yeah.
We both still love you. You did nothing to cause this. We're going to have some things that are going to stay the same and some things that are going to change. And kids are going to have lots of thoughts and feelings, and we can always keep talking about them. And I just think it needs to be pretty short and clear at the beginning, because too many words, actually, this is not the time. That first conversation, fight the urge to explain yourself. You don't owe anybody necessarily an answer. Even to your older kids, by the way, your teens or your young adults or older who might have more. You don't owe anybody in that moment. They're also really, when you respond to these questions, right? Things like, but I don't have any of my stuffies aren't at daddy's, or I don't have this there, right? Yes, you could say things like, well, of course we're going to buy you more stuffed animals, or we'll buy the same one, or we'll make sure you have clothes, or, daddy and I are going to coordinate, or mommy and I, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's also about the feeling underneath, right? We're sort of, when we just respond to their super kind of needs, yes, we are going to make sure you have your stuffies. And you're not thinking about all the ways in which your life is going to change.
Right. And
Let's
control.
Let's take a deep breath there. Because then you're actually also giving words and a narrative to the kids' feelings, which they don't necessarily have information for. And I think that's true even for adult kids. And late teens who kind of come out with all these questions about the practicalities.
Yeah.
Well, that's their way of controlling. But kind of explain to them, these practicalities are about you now feeling like, oh my God, I have to think about so many more things. I'm feeling so stressed. I'm feeling so overwhelmed in these moments.
Yeah.
And you can always come to me, and we're always going to figure it out together.
I love that. All of what you just said is how beautiful and how perfect. Save this episode, go listen to Dr. Erica over and over again, because I think that is just perfect. All of that, what you said. So where do you work, and how do you work with people?
Yeah, so I work a lot on Zoom virtual, like many people now. I see families, parents, both who are separated actually and working on how to co-parent or work with their kids. I work with a lot of parents whose kids are neurodivergent, learning challenges, anxiety, depression, OCD, but also just, the day-to-day of how do I parent and how do we think about what kind of parents we want to be.
Yeah.
And my other half of my practice is actually focused on neuropsych assessment. But definitely my parent work is over Zoom in New York and New Jersey predominantly.
Amazing. And if anybody's listening to this, Erica, and they're going through a divorce, what would be some words of encouragement that you could leave them with?
Just by actually listening to this podcast and these videos, I know that you are trying to soak in information and be the best parent for your kid as possible. We cannot control our kids' responses and feelings, and they're not going to understand everything right now. But know this, if you're doing these things and you're thinking about your child in this way, it is a process and it will come, and I believe in you. And that is, I think, the one thing I really want to say is I have hope that things are going to change. It's not always going to feel this way.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, so important, so important. Well, we appreciate you so much. And you can head to the show notes and check out Erica at Fresh Starts and the expert guide, of course. And thank you this was a really important episode. And I think it's going to give a lot of people just a lot of peace to know that they have the words now that they can start these conversations. So I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Divorce Happens is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the only divorce registry platform for everything you need to begin again, including home items, hype team, and everything in between. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh. We're here to support you before, during, and after divorce. Head to freshstartsregistry.com for more info.